The sky burned red that morning as the massive NIGMA ship cast its shadow over Seoul. Dr. June Park stood at the observation deck, his hands steady despite the weight of the moment. After 20 years studying possible alien languages, the day had finally come. First contact, real contact. "Are you ready?" asked Han, his research assistant. She handed him the translation device they had worked on for months since detecting the first NIGMA signals. "As ready as anyone can be," June replied, straightening his jacket. He wasn't just representing South Korea today. He represented all of humanity. The landing ramp extended from the sleek silver ship with a soft hiss. Fog swirled around three tall figures as they descended. The aliens were exactly as their transmissions had shown. Tall, blue-skinned beings with forearms and eyes that seemed to shift color with their mood. "I am June Park, representing Earth," he said clearly into the translator. "The tallest NIGMA." Representative tilted its head. "I am Overseer Null," came the reply through their own device. "We represent the NIGMA Empire, sovereign over 1,412 worlds across this galaxy." The meeting moved to a specially prepared conference room. World leaders joined via secure video links as June led the talks. The NIGMA delegates spoke with perfect precision, explaining their vast empire that spanned nearly a third of the Milky Way, comprised of 7 different species who had joined together centuries ago. "We bring technological offerings," said Null, extending a data crystal. "Cures for your diseases, solutions to your energy problems, an end to your primitive struggles." Something in the way he said primitive made June uncomfortable. He noticed how the NIGMA delegates looked at humans, the way someone might look at an interesting insect. Later that night, June and his team analyzed the data provided by the NIGMA, while the others celebrated the medical breakthroughs contained. In the files, June found himself drawn to another section, historical records of NIGMA expansion. "Han, look at this," he said, pointing to his screen. "These patterns in their colonial history." Han leaned over his shoulder. "What am I looking at?" "Each of these worlds, they follow the same pattern. NIGMA arrives, offers technology, establishes mining operations, and then—" He scrolled through image after image of barren planets. "They're all depleted," Han whispered, "completely stripped." Over the next 3 days, while diplomatic talks continued, June and his team worked tirelessly, correlating the data. The pattern was unmistakable. The NIGMA Empire didn't form alliances. They consumed worlds. They would arrive, offer technological marvels in exchange for mining rights, then systematically extract all valuable resources until the planet could no longer support life. At the 5th diplomatic meeting, June requested special permission to present his findings. "Distinguished delegates," he began, standing before the World Council and the 3 NIGMA representatives. "We appreciate your generous offers of technology and assistance. However, we have concerns about your intentions." The central screen displayed his research. "Your historical expansion shows a consistent pattern. On every world where you've established operations, you've extracted resources until the planets became uninhabitable. Nindaria was once a thriving forest world. Now, it's a barren wasteland. Kepler 442b had oceans covering 80% of its surface. Now it's a desert." The room fell silent. World leaders looked at each other nervously. "Based on our analysis, your proposed mining operations would destabilize Earth's ecosystem within 60 years, rendering large portions uninhabitable within a century." Overseer Null blinked slowly, its eyes shifting to a deep purple. Then a strange sound emerged from all 3 NIGMA delegates, a high-pitched trilling that the translation device took a moment to process. They were laughing. "Dr. Park," Null finally said, "your species still measures time in such small increments. How quaint." "Quaint," June repeated. "Your concerns stem from your limited understanding. Yes, we extract resources, efficiently and completely. That is progress. Planets are simply material to be utilized, but the indigenous life forms are typically relocated if they prove useful," interrupted another delegate, "or allowed to naturally conclude their evolutionary path if not." The cold reality hit June like a physical blow. To the NIGMA, humans were just another species to be managed during resource extraction. Useful or not, nothing more. Earth will not agree to these terms, June said firmly. Our planet is not yours to consume. The NIGMA delegates exchanged glances, their skin rippling with colors. You misunderstand, Dr. Park, said Null, its voice suddenly gentle as if speaking to a child. We are not requesting permission. We are simply explaining what will happen. Your governments have already agreed to preliminary mining surveys in exchange for medical technology. By your laws, we have already begun. June looked to the world leaders on screen. Many couldn't meet his eyes. Your warnings are noted, Dr. Park, Null continued, but unnecessary. The NIGMA Empire has perfected this process across hundreds of worlds. Your concerns, while understandable given your primitive perspective, are unfounded. As the meeting concluded, June stood alone at the window, watching smaller NIGMA ships already descending toward various points on Earth. They laughed at us, Han said, joining him. June nodded, his jaw tight. They think we're simple, primitive, that we'll just accept this. What do we do now? June turned to her, determination hardening in his eyes. They think humans are predictable, that we'll follow the same path as all those other worlds. He looked back at the ships. But they've never met humans before, and they have no idea what we're capable of when threatened. 3 months after first contact, the night sky had changed. 12 massive NIGMA ships now hung in Earth's orbit like new moons, visible even in daylight. People had grown used to seeing them, though the comfort they brought with their advanced medical technology was mixed with a creeping unease. Commander Yoon Kim stood before the Earth Defense Council, a hastily assembled group of military leaders from 27 nations. The projector behind her displayed a time-lapse simulation of Earth's future based on NIGMA's proposed mining operations. As you can see, Yoon said, pointing to the spreading red zones on the map, their extraction methods will cause irreversible damage to our ecosystems. These aren't just projections, they're promises. We've analyzed the data from other worlds they've stripped. The Australian representative leaned forward. But they've cured cancer, Commander Kim. 3 million people are alive today who wouldn't have been without NIGMA medicine. I understand that, Yoon replied, but at what cost? Look at year 30 of the simulation. The map showed massive dead zones in the oceans, expanding deserts and critical water shortage alerts flashing across every continent. By year 50, large portions of Earth become uninhabitable. By year 70, she didn't need to finish. The simulation showed a planet that looked remarkably like the barren worlds in the NIGMA historical archives. The NIGMA representatives have assured us they have relocation protocols, said the representative from Brazil. Yes, relocation, Yoon said bitterly, to their work colonies. We'd survive as a species, just not here and not free. The door opened, and 3 NIGMA officials glided in, their skin shimmering with blues and purples. The tallest one, Overseer. Null had apparently been listening. Commander Kim, its translator voiced in that unnervingly calm tone. Your concerns continue to amuse us. These projections fail to account for NIGMA mitigation technologies that we've used successfully on hundreds of worlds. Yoon stood her ground. Forgive me, Overseer, but your definition of success seems to be whether you get all the resources, not whether the planet remains habitable. Null's skin rippled with those color patterns that Yoon had learned, indicated their version of laughter. Your perspective is so limited by time. All planets exhaust their resources eventually. We simply make the process efficient. Efficient for whom? Yoon challenged. For progress, replied Null. We've brought you a new offering today. It gestured, and another delegate stepped forward with a glowing cube. This contains plans for atmospheric processes that will extend Earth's habitability by nearly 30 years beyond your projections. A generous concession, the council members murmured among themselves. 30 more years seemed significant to them. And in exchange, Yoon asked, merely permission to establish deeper mining operations in your ocean floors. The minerals there are particularly valuable to us. After the meeting, Yoon found Dr. June Park waiting outside the council chambers. Let me guess, June said. They laughed again. Yoon nodded, falling into step beside him as they walked down the corridor. They don't just dismiss our concerns, they find them entertaining, like we're children afraid of the dark. I've been working with my team on something, June said quietly. Something I think you should see. They took a secure elevator down to a sub-basement lab where several scientists were working. One wall was covered with brain scan images, some human, some clearly alien. "What am I looking at?" Yoon asked. A young neuroscientist named Tae approached. "These are comparative brain function analyses. We've been studying the NIGMA neural patterns from the medical data they provided." "And?" Yoon prompted. "They're incredible," Tae said. "Their processing power is roughly 16 times that of a human brain. Their memory capacity is virtually unlimited, but," he pointed to a specific section of scans, "their neural pathways are fixed, completely standardized across all 7 species in their empire." Joan stepped in. "They think in absolutely linear patterns. It's what makes them so efficient, so logical, but they can't form new neural connections the way humans can." "I don't understand the significance," Yoon admitted. "Creativity," June said. "Simply. They can't think creatively. They can't make intuitive leaps or connections between unrelated concepts. Everything they know, they learned through systematic, methodical processes." "Their technology," Yoon began, "is impressive," Tae agreed. "But it's all built on iteration and improvement of existing concepts. Nothing revolutionary. They haven't had a true breakthrough technology in over 300 years. Yoon looked at the scans again with new understanding. "That's why they dismissed our warnings. They can't imagine solutions that don't follow their established patterns." "Exactly," June said, "and it's our advantage. They've conquered worlds across the galaxy, but they've never encountered a species with our particular cognitive abilities. They literally cannot predict what we might do." Yoon's mind was racing. "So, while the Council debates whether to accept their gifts, we work on solutions they would never consider," June finished. "Solutions that don't exist in their database of conquered species." For the first time since the NIGMA arrived, Yoon felt a flicker of hope. "We need a team. The best minds, but unconventional thinkers. People who can see connections others miss." June smiled. "Already working on it. I've got mathematicians, engineers, even artists and musicians." "Artists?" Yoon raised an eyebrow. "Trust me," June said. "The NIGMA would never think to consult a pianist on interstellar communications. That's exactly why we need to." Outside the window of the underground lab, they could see the shadow of a NIGMA ship passing overhead, blocking out the sun for a moment. "They think they know exactly how this plays out," Yoon said quietly. "They've seen it 1,000 times before. Offer the gifts, extract the resources, move on to the next world." "But they've never met humans before," June replied. "And they have no idea what we're capable of when our backs are against the wall." As they walked back to the elevator, Yoon asked, "How long do we have?" "Based on their current operations, maybe 6 months before their extraction reaches a point of no return." Yoon nodded grimly. "Then we have 6 months to do what no species has ever done before." "What's that?" "Surprise the NIGMA Empire." The underground lab beneath Seoul National University had become a hive of activity over the past 4 months, even as the outside world slowly surrendered more land to NIGMA mining operations. To an outsider, the lab would appear chaotic. Whiteboards covered with equations, makeshift server racks humming in corners, and dozens of scientists working around the clock. But there was method to this madness. This was humanity's last best hope. Dr. June Park hadn't slept properly in days. The dark circles under his eyes had become so pronounced that his colleagues joked they could be seen from space. Not that. Anyone was joking much these days. "You look terrible," said Han, placing a steaming cup of coffee on his desk. June rubbed his eyes. "Thanks for the update. Any progress with the communication analysis?" He nodded, too tired for words, and pulled up a holographic display. It showed a complex web of light patterns, the visual representation of NIGMA's interstellar communication network. "Their entire system operates on a standardized protocol," June explained, his voice growing more animated despite his exhaustion. 7 different species, but they all communicate the same way. It's elegant, but what?" Han leaned closer. "It's rigid, predictable. They sacrifice security for efficiency." He pointed to pulsing nodes in the network. "These are their communication relay points. Once we cracked their encoding pattern, I realized something incredible. They never change their frequencies, never update their security protocols. Why would they? Han asked. They've never needed to. No species has ever challenged them. June's tired face broke into a smile. Until now. Across the city, in a former banking data center now repurposed. By the Earth Defense Council, Commander Yoon Kim was having a very different conversation. It won't work, said Tae, the young programmer who had been analyzing NIGMA technology. Their systems are quantum encrypted. It would take 1,000 years to brute force their defenses. Yoon stared at the screen, refusing to accept defeat. Then we don't attack where they're strong. We find where they're weak. She pulled up Dr. Park's latest communication analysis. June says their entire network has standardized protocols. What? If we don't try to break their encryption, but instead mimic it, Tae finished, eyes widening. Create a virus that doesn't break in but blends in. Yoon nodded. Exactly. They're so confident in their technological superiority that they won't be looking for this kind of infiltration. For weeks, the two teams worked separately but in concert. June's linguists and communication experts mapped every facet of NIGMA's transmissions, while Yoon's programmers developed what they called the Ghost, a quantum virus designed to move through NIGMA systems undetected until activated. On the surface, humanity played its part perfectly. World governments publicly accepted each new NIGMA demand with appropriate displays of gratitude. New mining rights were granted in the Pacific. Coastal evacuations proceeded without incident. The aliens were granted access to Earth's satellite network for efficiency purposes. Meanwhile, scientists around the world discreetly repositioned satellites, installed hidden backup systems, and prepared Earth's infrastructure for what was to come. Progress report, Yoon asked during one of their rare joint meetings, held in a lead-lined room deep underground to prevent NIGMA surveillance. June looked up from his tablet. We've mapped their entire command structure. It's fascinating. Each of the 7 species handles different aspects of their empire. The archivists manage data. The navigators handle fleet movements. The harvesters oversee resource extraction. And they're all connected through this central network, Yoon asked. Not just connected, dependent. Their empire spans thousands of worlds, but they function as a single organism. June projected a new diagram. They have no backup systems, no redundancies. Why would they? They've never experienced system failure. And now for the truly interesting part, Han added, stepping forward. We've discovered something unexpected about their biology. The 7 species aren't just politically united, they're neurologically linked, some form of artificial telepathic connection that allows instant communication across vast distances. That's their advantage, June said, but potentially their greatest weakness. As weeks passed, the NIGMA continued to expand their operations, oblivious to what was happening beneath the surface. When reports of small acts of human resistance reached their central command ship, the aliens dismissed them. Minor disruptions. In Mining Site 4, reported an underling to Overseer Null, humans attempting to sabotage equipment. Insignificant, Null replied. Increase security drones in that sector. The protests will fade as they always do. There are also reports of unusual activity in their communications network. Their primitive systems pose no threat, Null said dismissively. Continue as planned. Back in Seoul, Yoon and June were ready to brief the Defense Council on their progress. The ghost virus is complete, Yoon announced to the assembled leaders. It can infiltrate their systems and remain dormant until activated. And I've identified the frequencies that maintain their telepathic network, June added. Disrupt those and we disrupt their entire command structure. The American representative looked skeptical. Even if this works, they still have thousands of ships. How do we prevent immediate retaliation? We don't attack their ships, Yoon explained. We attack their unity. Without their hive-mind coordination, they'll be in chaos. And the risk? Asked another representative. June and Yoon exchanged glances. Total, June admitted. If we fail, they'll know we tried. Their response would be final. And if we do nothing, Yoon challenged, how long before Earth becomes just another depleted world in their archive? The Council voted unanimously to proceed. The night before their plan was to be activated, June sat alone in the lab, staring at his reflection in a darkened screen. Tomorrow would determine the fate of humanity. Success meant survival. Failure meant extinction. "Can't sleep?" June asked, appearing at the doorway. "Not even close," he replied with a tired smile. She sat beside him. "I was just thinking about something Overseer Null said during that first meeting, about how we measure time in such small increments. What about it?" He laughed at us for thinking in decades instead of centuries. She leaned back in her chair. "After tomorrow, I wonder if they'll learn to think in minutes and seconds instead." June nodded. "They've conquered worlds across the galaxy, but they've never met humans before. And they have no idea what we're capable of when our backs are against the wall." Dawn broke over Busan as military trucks arrived at the fishing village. NIGMA enforcement drones hovered overhead, their metallic voices announcing through loudspeakers, "Evacuation is mandatory. You have 4 hours to collect essential belongings. Resistance will not be tolerated." Old Mr. Sung stood in front of E. His family's home of 5 generations, clutching a wooden fishing charm his grandfather had carved. "This is where my family has lived for 100 years, he told the young soldier who came to escort him. "Where am I supposed to go?" The soldier, barely 20, looked away. "I'm sorry, the mineral deposits beneath the harbor. They want them all." Similar scenes played out across coastlines worldwide. The NIGMA Empire had abandoned all pretense of partnership. What had begun as cooperative mining ventures had become forced relocations. Millions displaced, so the aliens could access the rich underwater mineral deposits they coveted. In Seoul, Commander Yoon Kim received the reports with grim determination. "They've crossed the final line," she told her team, assembled in the underground. "Command Center. Authorization code Ghost Protocol commence in 3 hours." Across the facility, technicians began final preparations on the quantum virus they'd named the Ghost. 6 months of work, endless simulations, countless sleepless nights, all leading to this moment. "Status report," Yoon demanded, striding. Into the central operations room. "Ghost deployment systems ready," reported Tae, the lead programmer. "Insertion points identified across all 17 NIGMA communication nodes. And their detection systems? Still blind to our presence. They're scanning for brute force attacks, not mimicry." Yoon nodded and opened a secure channel to Dr. June Park's team. "June, are you ready on your end?" June's tired face appeared on screen. "Frequency disruptors are in position. We've hidden transmitters in their own relay stations. They still have no idea. Remember," Owen said to both teams, "timing is everything. The Ghost must spread through their network before we activate the frequency disruptors. If we move too soon, they'll lock down their systems." June nodded. 30 minutes to full infection, then we hit them with the frequencies." As the countdown began, Yoon made one final call to the Earth Defense Council. "We're proceeding as planned. Please ensure all critical Earth systems are on isolated networks." Across the globe, power grids, water systems, and communication networks were quietly disconnected from any system the NIGMA might control. Hospitals switched to backup generators. Military bases activated independent command protocols. In orbit, above Earth, aboard the NIGMA command ship, Overseer Null received the daily reports with typical indifference. "Extraction rates are 15% below projections," an underling reported. "Increase the processing speed," Null commanded. "The humans' resistance is merely symbolic. They'll adapt, as all species do." "There's unusual activity in communication." "Node 12, another officer reported. "Probably their primitive attempts at surveillance," Null dismissed. "Their computational systems pose no threat to ours." The officer hesitated. "It doesn't match known human infiltration patterns." For the first time, Null showed a flicker of concern, skin rippling with colors. "Investigate," he ordered, but it was already too late. At precisely 10 a.m. Korea Standard Time, Tae pressed the activation key. "Ghost deployed," he announced, voice steady despite the weight of the moment. On screens around the command center, they watched as the virus spread silently through the NIGMA network. It moved like water seeping through cracks, invisible until it was everywhere. "Infiltration at 30%, Tae reported. 40%. 55%. In orbit, the first signs of trouble appeared. Minor systems began failing across the NIGMA fleet. Navigation sensors gave false readings. Life support showed phantom fluctuations. System diagnostics show multiple errors, an officer reported to Null, confusion in his voice. "Run a purge protocol," Null ordered, still calm but now fully alert. Purge initiated, but it's not responding correctly. Across the command ship's bridge, displays flickered. Some went dark entirely. "Infiltration at 80%, Tay reported. Back on Earth. 90% full infiltration achieved. Yoon immediately contacted June. "Execute frequency disruption now." In hidden locations around the world, transmitters activated, broadcasting precisely calculated frequency patterns, the exact resonance that would disrupt the telepathic connection binding the 7 NIGMA species together. The effect was immediate and devastating. Aboard the command ship, Null suddenly clutched his head, falling to his knees. Every NIGMA throughout the ship did the same. Their skin flashed chaotic colors as they lost the mental connection that had united them for centuries. "What is happening?" Null gasped, experiencing something no NIGMA had felt in generations: isolation. The constant background hum of millions of connected minds had gone silent. On Earth, humans watched in amazement as NIGMA ships lost formation. Some drifted aimlessly. Others engaged emergency protocols, their lights flashing in distress patterns. "It's working," Yoon breathed, hardly believing what she was seeing. "Their ships are losing coordination." The virus had done its work perfectly. Life support systems failed on dozens of vessels. Navigation systems sent ships veering away from Earth. Communication relays broadcast gibberish. And without their telepathic connection, the NIGMA couldn't coordinate repairs or responses. In Busan, the enforcement drones simply dropped from the sky, their control signals severed. The military trucks halted as the NIGMA overseers collapsed, clutching their heads in pain. Old Mr. Sung watched in astonishment as the aliens who had come to take his home were now struggling just to stand. Within hours, NIGMA ships throughout the solar system were either retreating in disarray or drifting, powerless in space. The mighty empire that had laughed at human warnings had discovered too late that they had fatally underestimated their prey. As night fell over Seoul, Yoon and June stood on a rooftop, watching the distant flashes of NIGMA ships jumping to hyperspace, fleeing Earth as fast as their damaged systems would allow. "They never imagined we could do this," June said quietly. "No," Yoon agreed. "They thought they knew exactly how this would end. They'd seen it 1,000 times before. But they'd never met humans before." The sunset painted the Seoul skyline in shades of amber and gold, casting a warm glow over the Memorial Plaza, where the NIGMA headquarters once stood. Dr. June Park stood before the simple stone monument at its center, his hand running over the inscription that had become famous throughout the known galaxy. "They laughed at human warnings. They learned too late." 5 years had passed since that decisive day when humanity had turned the tables on their would-be conquerors. 5 years of remarkable change. "Still coming here after all this time?" asked a familiar voice. June turned to see Commander Eun Kim approaching, dressed in the formal blue uniform of the Earth Alliance Diplomatic Corps. Her hair had more silver streaks now, but she carried herself with the same quiet confidence. "Some habits are hard to break," June replied with a smile. "Besides, I leave for Proxima Centauri tomorrow. Thought I should pay my respects before heading off-world again." They stood in companionable silence, watching as visitors from a dozen different worlds wandered through the plaza. Tourists taking photos, school children on field trips, even a few NIGMA, the ones who had chosen to stay and live peacefully among humans. "Have you seen the latest reports from the Outer Rim?" Yoon asked, breaking the silence. June nodded. "Another former NIGMA colony asking to join the Alliance. That makes 23 now." 24, actually. Kepler 442b sent their petition. "This morning." June raised an eyebrow. "Kepler? Isn't that—" "Yes," Yoon said quietly. "The first world the NIGMA stripped completely. They've spent 3 decades trying to restore their ecosystem. Our sustainable terraforming techniques are finally showing results." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The very practices the NIGMA had mocked as inefficient were now bringing dead worlds back to life. A school group approached the memorial, their young teacher explaining the significance of the site. June and Yoon stepped back, listening as she described the NIGMA collapse to wide-eyed children. After the invasion failed, the teacher explained, the NIGMA Empire fell apart completely. Without their telepathic network, and with their ships scattered across space, they couldn't maintain control of their territories. The 7 species that made up the Empire had been connected for so long that they'd forgotten how to function independently. What happened to them all? Asked a boy at the front of the group. Many different things, the teacher replied. Some formed small colonies, others asked for Earth's help. A few tried to rebuild their empire, but without success. The NIGMA, as we knew them, no longer exist. After the children moved on, Yoon chuckled. She makes it sound so simple. History lessons usually do, June replied. They don't mention the chaos of those first 2 years. The humanitarian missions to stranded NIGMA ships. The negotiations with former subject worlds suddenly free after centuries of control. Or the fact that we nearly collapsed ourselves trying to manage it all, Yoon added. They began walking toward the transport hub, where ships now regularly departed Earth for colonies and outposts throughout the solar system and beyond. Human expansion into space had accelerated beyond anyone's wildest dreams, fueled by modified NIGMA technology and a newfound confidence. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if they'd just listened? June asked. That first day when I showed them our projections about what their mining would do to Earth. If Overseer Null hadn't laughed. Yoon considered this. Maybe we'd have found a middle path, sustainable resource sharing, cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, instead of forcing us into a corner. Never corner something that thinks creatively, Yoon said with a wry smile. That's the lesson the galaxy learned. They passed a research facility where scientists were studying the NIGMA telepathic technology. Not to replicate it exactly, humanity had decided that kind of neural uniformity was too high a price to pay, but to understand it, to learn from it while avoiding its pitfalls. The Proxima colony is making good progress, Yoon said, changing the subject. Their governor speaks highly of you. June shrugged modestly. I'm just there to advise on their communication systems, make sure they don't repeat the NIGMA's mistakes. You mean creating a single point of failure for their entire civilization? Among other things, they reached the transport hub and paused before parting ways. Above them, the evening sky was filling with lights, ships coming and going from Earth, a constant stream of movement that symbolized humanity's new place in the galactic community. The Alliance Council meeting is next month on Tau Ceti, Yoon said. I expect to see you there. Wouldn't miss it. I hear the representatives from Nindaria have a new proposal for reclaiming their ocean ecosystems. Using our methods, Yoon said, with pride. The same ones Null dismissed as primitive and inefficient. Old Mr. Sung from the Busan fishing village approached them, now serving as Earth's Minister of Historical Preservation. The elderly man's fishing village had become famous after the war, the place where the first NIGMA drones had fallen from the sky. Ambassador Park, Ambassador Kim, he greeted them warmly. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, June assured him. How goes the preservation project? Very well. We've restored the original coastline where the NIGMA began their mining. Future generations should see both what was nearly lost and what was saved. As they talked, a group of NIGMA citizens passed by, former engineers who had chosen to stay on Earth and help rebuild what their empire had damaged. They nodded respectfully to the 3 humans, their skin shifting to colors that June now recognized as expressing gratitude and hope. That night, as he packed for his journey to Proxima Centauri, June found himself thinking about how much had changed. Humanity had gone from fighting for survival to leading a galactic alliance. Former enemies were now partners. Devastated worlds were being reborn, and it had all begun with a warning that went unheeded. In his apartment overlooking the city, June opened his balcony doors to feel the night breeze. The stars above seemed closer now, more accessible. Not distant points of light, but destinations, homes, possibilities. His communication device chimed with a message from Yoon. Safe travels. Tomorrow. Remember to bring back some of those Proxima flowers for my garden. They're the only ones my Earth plants haven't outcompeted yet. June smiled. Even after all they'd achieved, it was these small human moments that mattered most. The garden Yun tended, the coastal village Mr. Sung had saved, the children learning history in the plaza. The night sky flashed briefly as a ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading out toward the stars, toward a future that no one, not even the mighty NIGMA Empire, could have predicted. A future where humanity's creative spirit had not only saved Earth but transformed the galaxy.